Sorry, Sydney, I took your role of clicking record. We should have all of our documents up here. Make sure you have them out. We've got a lot to do today. We need to remember that Jim is on his boat. Jim is on the Hispaniola, hanging for dear life as the boat was swelling in the swells of the ocean. He was hanging on for dear life on this little jib, caught onto it, and then it crushed the goat boat underneath, right? So the next chapter, chapter 25, begins with him hanging on to the bowsprit. Yeah?
Can I get the pen? Can I get it?
Oh, God, I thought did you not want to come get that one?
Sorry.
Here you go. All right. So, chapter 25, if you have a red book, is page 105. All right? It's called I Strike the Jolly Roger. You got your phones. I don't know what page it is in the black book. Don't bend the spine. 174. It's XXV. I strike the Jolly Roger. I had scarce gained position on the bowsprit when the flying jib flapped and filled upon another tack. Lots of weird sea terms in this. Basically, he's holding on and it's waving up and down as this thing is swelling and swelling. The schooner trembled up to her keel under the reverse, but next moment, the other sail still drawing, the jib flapped back again and hung idle. Whoa! And it's like swinging him out over the ocean. Then poof, slams back. This had nearly tossed me off into the sea, and now I lost no time, crawled back along the bowsprit, and tumbled head foremost, oh, boom, onto the deck of the ship. He's now safe on the boat. A couple scratches. I was on the lee side of the forecastle and the mainsail, which was still drawing, concealed from me a certain portion of the afterdeck. He's on this side of the boat, and he can't see back here. He can see up around here, but he can't see on the back of the boat because the sail keeps swinging back and forth because nobody's controlling it. Not a soul was to be seen. The planks, which had not been swabbed since the mutiny, bore the print of many feet, and an empty bottle, broken by the neck, tumbled to and fro like a living thing in the scuppers. This bottle is just rolling as the boat is rocking back and forth. Suddenly the Hispaniola came right into the wind. Ooh, the jibs behind me cracked aloud. The rudder slammed to. The whole ship gave a sickening heave and shuddered. And at the same moment the main boom swung inboard. The sheet groaning in the blocks and showed me the lee afterdeck. Oh, I can see back there now. There were the two watchmen. Who's one of them? Israel Hands is one. We put an anchor next to him. And then pirate number 9. All right.
Isn't Israel Hands like really good with the gun?
Yeah, he is really good with the gun and the cannon. That's the guy you bought on your ship that's good with the cannon. The planks, there were the two watchmen. Sure enough, there's Redcap on his back, as stiff as a handspike, with his arms stretched out like those of a crucifix, his teeth showing through his open lips. And Israel Hands, propped up against the bulwarks, his chin on his chest, his hands lying open before him on the deck, his face white under its tan as a tallow candle. His face is all white looking, and he's laying like this. For a while the ship kept buckling and sidling like a vicious horse, the sails filling, now on the tack, now on the other, and the boom swinging to and fro till the mast groaned under the strain. And now and again, too, there would come a loud light spray over the bulwark, and a heavy blow of the ship's bows against the swell. So much heavier weather was made of it by this great rigged ship than by my homemade lopsided coracle, now gone to the bottom of the sea. I was just riding on this goat boat, and it was like, yeah, I'll ride the waves, no problem. But this huge schooner, it's like, whoa, these waves up here on the north are way heavier than the anchorage we were used to down here. Tracking with me? For a while, every jump of the schooner, Red Cap, who's that? Red Cap.
Pirate 9, isn't it?
No, pirate number 9 is now Red Cap, slipped to and fro, but was ghastly to behold. Neither his attitude nor his 6 teeth disclosing grin was anyways disturbed by this rough usage. At every jump, too, Hands appeared still more and more to sink into himself and settle down upon the deck, his feet sliding ever farther out, and the whole body canting towards the stern, so that his face became, little by little, hid from me. And at last I could see nothing beyond his ear and the frayed ringlet of one whisker. He's got those whiskers that come out and curl up. You can't really see his face anymore. What's up with him? At the same time, I observed around both of them splashes of dark blood upon the planks, and began to feel sure that they had killed each other in their drunken wrath. While I was thus looking and wondering in a calm moment, when the ship was still, Israel Hands turned partly around, and with a low moan, writhed himself back into the position in which I had first seen him. The moan, which told of pain and deadly weakness, and the way in which his jaw hung open, went right to my heart. Oh man, he's hurt. But when I remembered the talk I had overheard from the apple barrel, all pity left me. Wait a minute, that's not the guy I liked before. I know he's one of the bad guys. He's on the wrong list. I walked aft until I reached the main mast. I walked up to him. Come aboard, Mr. Hands. He rolled his eyes round heavily. But he was too far gone to express surprise. All I could do was utter one word. Brandy. It occurred to me there was no time to lose, and dodging the boom as it once more lurched across the deck, I slipped aft and down the companion stairs into the cabin. It was such a scene of confusion as you could hardly fancy. All the lock-fast places had been broken open in the quest of the chart. The floor was thick with mud where ruffians had sat down to drink or consult after waiting in the marshes round their camp. The bulkheads, all painted in clear white and beaded round with gilt, bore a pattern of dirty hands. It was this beautiful room, painted white with wood beading, and it was gorgeous. Now it looks like my kids have had control for about 3 days. Dozens of empty bottles clinked together in the corners to the rolling of the ship. One of the doctor's medical books lay open on the table, half the leaves gutted out, I suppose, for pipe lights. In the midst of all this, the lamp still cast a smoky glow, obscure and brown as umber. There's that light swaying to and fro that has the gas, the fuel in it. So there's still a little bit of light underground, but everything's a big mess. I went into the cellar. All the barrels were gone. And of the bottles, a most surprising number had been drunk out and thrown away. Certainly since the mutiny began, not a man of them could have been sober. I know we haven't been able to sit down and purchase like I had hoped, but the main thing is everything that you bought, the pirates just ate and drank all of it. It's all gone. Foraging about, I found a bottle with some brandy left for Hands. And for myself, I routed out some biscuits, some pickled fruits, a great bunch of raisins, and a piece of cheese. With these, I came on deck, put down my own stock behind the rudderhead, and well out of the coxswain's reach, went forward to the water breaker and had a good, deep drink of water. And then, not till then, gave Hands the brandy. Who's Israel Hands in here? Israel Hands, here's some brandy. Nice catch. Here's some brandy, buddy. He must have drunk the gill before he took the bottle from his mouth. Aye, but I needed some of that. I had sat down already in my own corner and begun to eat. "You much hurt?" I asked him. He grunted, or rather I might say he barked. "If that doctor was aboard," he said, "I'd be right enough in a couple of turns, but I don't have no manner of luck, you see, and that's what's the matter with me. As for that swab, he's good and dead, he is," he added, indicating the man with the red cap. "He wasn't no seaman anyhow. And where might you've come from?" Well, we can say one thing. Pirate number 9, he gone.
Come on, really, I'm dead again. Thank goodness I'm not dead.
Don't you say yet.
And where might you have come from? Well, I've come aboard to take possession of this ship, Mr. Hans, and you please regard me as your captain until further notice. He looked at me sourly enough, but said nothing. Some of the color had come back into his cheeks, though he still looked very sick, and still continued to slip out and settle down as the ship banged about. By the by, I continued, I can't have these colors, Mr. Hans, and by your leave, I'll strike 'em. Better none than these. And again, dodging the boom, I ran to the color lines, handed down their cursed flag, black flag, the Jolly Roger, and chucked it overboard. God save the king, said I, waving my cap. And there's an end to Captain Silver. He watched me keenly and slyly, his chin all the while on his breast. I reckon, he said at last, I reckon, Captain Hawkins, you'll kind of want to get to shore now. Suppose we talks. Why, yes, says I, with all my heart, Mr. Hans. Say on. And I went back to my meal with good appetite. This man, he began, nodding feebly at the corpse. O'Brien was his name. A rank islander. This man and me got the canvas on her, meaning for to sail her back. If you need to, you can. You can write down the guy's name was O'Brien. But he's still dead. They had put the sails up because they were like, let's get out of here. Save ourselves. Somehow they must have gotten into some fight because that's what pirates do. We saw that with Pew fighting the guys outside the Admiral Benbow, right?
Yeah.
So, some reason they got into a fight and he killed him. Well, he's dead now. He is. As dead as bilge. And who's to sail this ship? I don't see. Without that gives you a hint. You ain't that man as far as I can tell. Now look here, you gives me food and drink, an old scarf or handkerchief to tie my wound up. You do. And I'll tell you how to sail her. And that's about square all around, I take it. Well, he admits he's got a wound. His real hands is injured. All right? Get your map?
Should we put an anchor by Jen?
If you want to. No. He says, hey, that guy's dead. He can't sail the ship. I'm obviously too hurt to sail the ship. You're going to have to sail it. But you don't know how. So let's work it out. You give me some food, give me something to help tie my wound up, and I'll tell you how to do it. Well, I tell you one thing, I'm not going back to Captain Kidd's anchorage. I mean to get in the North Inlet. Well, Captain Kidd's anchorage is down here. He's like, I'm not taking it back here. There's a North Inlet I want to take it to. Let's go there. Well, I meant to get to the North Inlet and beach her quietly there. To be sure you did, he cried. I ain't such an infernal lover. After all, I can see, can't I? I've tried my fling, I have, and I've lost. And it's you who has the wind of me. North Inlet? Why, I haven't no choice, I'm not I. I'd help you sail her up to execution dock, by thunder, so I would. If you had to sail me to your death, you're in charge, my friend, wherever you want to go. Well, as it seemed to me, there was some sense in this. We struck our bargain on the spot. In 3 minutes, I had the Hispaniola sailing easily before the wind along the coast of Treasure Island, with good hopes of turning to the northern point ere noon, and beating down again as far as North Inlet before high water, when we might beach her safely, and wait till the subsiding tide permitted us to land. You know, I think we can. He showed him just 2 or 3 things to get things under control, and he starts sailing here, and they're going to have to sail here and wait for the tide to bring them in so they can park the boat on the North Island, or the North Inlet. Then I lashed the tiller and went below to my own chest, where I got a soft silk handkerchief of my mother's. With this and with my aid, Hans bound up the great bleeding stab he had received in the thigh, and after he had eaten a little and swallowed, or had a swallow or 2 or more of the brandy, he began to pick up visibly, sat straighter up, spoke louder and clearer, and looked in every way another man. The breeze served us admirably. We skimmed before it like a bird, like the coast of the island, with the coast of the island flashing by. and the view changing every minute. Soon we were past the highlands and bowling beside low, sandy country, sparsely dotted with dwarf pines. Soon we were beyond that again, and had turned the corner of the rocky hill that ends the island on the north. I was greatly elated with my new command and pleased with the bright, sunshiny weather and these different prospects of the coast. It's like, wow, I'm sailing a ship. This is awesome. It's beautiful. I had now plenty of water and good things to eat, and my conscience, which had smitten me hard for my desertion, I felt bad that I ran away from everybody. But hey, I was quieted by the great conquest I'd made. I've got the ship. I think, have had nothing left for me to desire, but for the eyes of the coxswain as they followed me derisively about the deck, and the odd smile that appeared continually on his face. It was a smile that had in it something both of pain and weakness, a haggard old man's smile, but there was beside that a grain of derision, a shadow of treachery in his expression as he craftily watched and watched and watched me at my work. No, his real hands isn't a creeper, okay? But he is smiling at Jim. He's got this kind of weird look on his face. Creepy. But he's not a creeper. Chapter 26. Israel Hands. The wind serving us to a desire now hauled us into the west. We could run so much the easier from the northeast corner of the island to the mouth of the north inlet. Only, as we had no power to anchor and dared not beach her till the tide had flowed a good deal farther, time hung in our hands. Like I said, we're coming closer up here, but we've got to sit here and wait until the tide is high enough to go in. The coxswain told me how to lay the ship to, and after a good many trials I succeeded, and we both sat in silence over another meal. So we're just in the waiting stage here, Willow. Captain, said he, at length, with that uncomfortable smile.
Here's my old shipmate O'Brien. Suppose he was to leave him overboard. I ain't particular as a rule, and I don't take no blame for selling his hash, but I don't reckon him ornamental now, do you?
He's not like a Christmas tree. I don't really like looking at him. Well, I'm not strong enough, and I don't like the job. So there he lies for me. So I'm like, I'm not going to touch him. And you're too weak, so guess he's going to lay there.
This here's an unlucky ship, this Hispaniola, Jim.
He went on blinking.
There's a power of men been killed in this Hispaniola. A sight of poor seamen dead and gone since you and me took ship to Bristol. Never seen such steady luck, not I. There was this here O'Brien now, he's dead, ain't he? Well, now I'm no scholar, and you're a lad as can read and figure. And to put it straight, do you take it as a dead man is dead for good, or do he come alive again?
Now a little philosophy lesson here from Israel Hands. What do you think? People come back from the dead? Or are you just dead? You just close their eyes and we're done. Or is there something else after we die? You can kill the body, Mr. Hands, but not the spirit. You must know that already. O'Brien there's in another world and may even be watching us.
Ah, that's unfortunate. Appears as if killing parties was a waste of time.
It's actually kind of a funny line. Well, why are we killing each other if all we're going to do is end up somewhere else? What's the big deal?
Howsoever, spirits don't reckon for much by what I've seen. I'll chance it was spirits, Jim.
So, yeah, you know what? Never seen a ghost do anything except scare people, so I'm not too worried about it, even if I'm wrong. Yeah?
There are so many movies that ghosts do more than scare people.
Well, I didn't see the movies yet, so I'll tell
Okay,
Israel.
good, I worry about it.
I'll tell Israel next time.
He says, I'll chance it with the spirits, Jim. And now you spoke of free, and I'll take it kind of you to step down into that there cabin and get me, shiver my timbers, I can't think of the name on it. Will you give me a bottle of wine, Jim? This here brandy's too strong for my head.
Now, the coxswain's hesitation seemed to me a bit unnatural. And as for the notion of preferring wine to brandy, I entirely disbelieved it. Wait a minute. This is Jim Hawkins. When was the last time a pirate pulled something over on Jim? Right now he's saying, I'm not buying what this guy's selling. But that's all we've ever seen, isn't it? Got an example of the last time Jim was taken over by a pirate? Yeah.
When Long John Silver's acting really nice to him.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we're you smart as paint you is, but wow, we really messed up here, didn't we? We let that cop get away. And I'm like, Jim's like, oh man, you're right. Gosh, I should have done more.
You have another example? Yeah?
Where he was coming to the hotel and he grabbed him.
Yeah, he's like,
Oh yeah, man, that kid who lost his sight in the eyes and for the king, blah, 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 blah.
and then takes him, right? And it's like, dude, how did you not see that? But now our character's like, no, I'm not buying it. You see that dynamic? It's been subtle, but now you're like, no, Jim's figured this out. He's growing up.
Any bad pirates?
Whereas if Jim would have been right now, the Jim now wouldn't have been tricked by Pew, right? The Jim now wouldn't have been tricked by Long John Silver. There's just one picture, right, of him being a dynamic character that the author has slowly changed what Jim's like. It's been subtle. All right, let's keep going. Clearly, the whole story was a pretext. He wanted me to leave the deck. So much was plain, but what the purpose was, I could in no way imagine. Why does he want me to leave the deck? What's up? What's his plan? His eyes never met mine. They kept wandering to and fro, up and down, now with a look to the sky, now with a flitting glance on the dead O'Brien. All the time he kept smiling and putting his tongue out in the most guilty, embarrassed manner, like, hey, why don't you give me some brandy? No, the brandy's wine, yeah, it's too strong. Give me some wine. Like, this guy's a terrible liar. All the time he kept smiling, put his tongue out like the most guilty, embarrassed manner, so that a child could have told that he was bent on some deception. Come on, Jim, why are you judging? You couldn't figure out the blind guy was a bad guy. You couldn't figure out Long John Silver was a bad guy. I was prompt with my answer, however, for I saw that where my advantage lay, and that with a fellow so densely stupid I could easily conceal my suspicion to the end. Some wine, far better. Will you have wine till red? Well, I reckon it's about the blessed same to me, shipmate, he replied, so strong. So it's strong and plenty of it? What's the odds? Wait a minute, didn't you just say it was too strong and now you want something really strong? You're a terrible liar. All right, I'll bring you port, Mr. Hans, but I'll have to dig for it. Why would he have to dig for it?
Because all the pirates they took all the food.
Yeah, they took all of it, right? And so, clearly, but also, our boy Jim's also thinking on his feet better than he did before. He's got to buy some time. Ooh, it's going to take me a while to find it, all right? Check this out. With that, I scuttled down the companion with all the noise I could. Oh, I lost. Oh my gosh, there's nothing here. Slipped off my shoes and then ran quietly along the spar gallery. Mounted the forecastle ladder, which is in the back of the boat, and popped my head out of the fore companion, and I knew he would not expect to see me there, yet I took every precaution possible. And certainly, the worst of my suspicions proved true. He snuck underneath, came out of a secret little hole, and now he's watching his real hands. He had risen from his positions to his hands and knees, though his leg obviously hurt him pretty sharply when he moved, for I could hear him stifle a groan. Yet it was at a good rattling rate that he trailed himself across the deck. In half a minute he had reached the port scuppers, picked out a coil of rope, a long knife, or rather a short dirk, discolored to the hilt with blood. He looked upon it for a moment, thrusting forth under jaw, tried the point on his hand, and then hastily concealing it in the bosom of his jacket, trundled back again to his old place against the bulwark. He crawled over, got a knife, some rope, crawled back. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be a hurt guy. This was all that I required to know. Israel could move about, he was now armed, and if he had been so much trouble to get rid of me, it was plain that I was meant to be the victim. He wants to kill me. What he would do afterwards, whether he would try to crawl right across the island from the north inlet to the camp among the swamps, whether he'd just fire a long tom, trusting that his own comrades might come first to help him, was of course more than I could say. What he would do after he killed me, I don't know. But his plan is to kill me and then figure it out afterwards. Yet I felt sure I could trust him on one point. Since that our interests jumped together, and that was in the disposition of the schooner, we both desired to have her stranded safe in a sheltered place, so that when the time came she could be got off again, with a little labor and danger as might be. And until that was done, I considered that my life would certainly be spared. They both need each other. So he's not going to kill me yet. I've got to park the boat first. I've got until the boat is parked, then he's going to strike. While I was thus turning the business over in my mind, I had not been idle with my body. I'm thinking all this while I'm looking for the wine. I had stolen back to the cabin, slipped once more to my shoes, and laid my hand at random on the bottle of wine. And now, with this for an excuse, I made my reappearance on the deck. Hands lay as I had left him, all fallen together in a bundle, and with his eyes lowered as though he were too weak to bear the light. He looked, however, at my coming, knocked the neck off the bottle like a man who'd done it, the same thing often, took a swig to his favorite toast of "Here's the luck." Then he lay quiet for a while, pulling out a stick of tobacco, and begged me to cut him a quid. "Here's this long piece of tobacco," and he's like, "Hey, would you cut this for me? Cut me a chunk of that. For I haven't no knife, and hardly strength enough, so be as I had." What? What'd he say he doesn't have? What do we know that he has? He's like, "Oh, just so you know, I don't have a knife in my pocket."
Yeah,
Oh.
we seen you did.
Right.
"Ah, Jim, I've reckoned I've missed days. Cut me a quid, as a likely be the last. Oh, lad, for I'm on my long home, and no mistake."
"Oh, I'm too sick to move. I'm obvious this is my last piece of tobacco for my whole life." "Well, I'll cut you some tobacco, but if I was you and thought myself so badly, I would go to my prayers like a Christian man."
Why, now you tell me why.
"Why? You were just asking me just now about the dead. You've broken your trust. You've lived in sin and lies and blood. There's a man you killed lying at your feet this moment. And you ask me why. For God's mercy, Mr. Hans, that's why." I spoke with a little heat, thinking of the bloody dirk he had hidden in his pocket and designed in his ill thoughts to end me with. He, for his part, took a great draught of the wine and spoke with the most unusual solemnity.
For 30 years, I've sailed the seas, and seen good and bad, better and worse, fair weather and foul, provisions running out, knives going and whatnot. Well, now I don't tell you, I never seen good come of goodness yet.
Telling you what, there's no such thing as right and wrong, buddy. There's no such thing as good. It's all about survival. Survival of the fittest.
Him that strikes first is my fancy. Dead men don't bite. Them's my views. Amen. So be it. And now look here. Suddenly changing his tone. We've heard about enough of this foolery. The tide's made good enough by now. You just take my orders, Captain Hawkins, and we'll slap in and be done with it.
All told, we had scarce 2 miles to run, but the navigation was delicate. The entrance to the northern anchorage was not only narrow and shoal, but lay east and west, so that the schooner must be nicely handled to be got in. I think I was good prompt subaltern, and I'm very sure that Hans was an excellent pilot. We actually were a pretty good team, ironically. He only wants to kill me. When we went about and dodged in, shaving the banks with a certainty and neatness that were a pleasure to behold. They actually were like dodging here and cutting here and go, this way, that way. Scarcely had we passed the heads before the land closed around us. The shores of the North Inlet were as thickly wooded as those of the southern anchorage, but the space was longer and narrower and more like what in truth was the estuary of a river. We're actually coming in here. We're actually going to park the boat in what's really a river entrance or a delta. Right before us at the southern end, we saw the wreck of a ship in the last stages of dilapidation. If you want, you can draw an old ship that's rotting out on the north end of the island. It had been a great vessel of 3 masts, but it had lain so long exposed to the injuries of the weather that it was hung about with great webs of dripping seaweed, and on the deck of it shore bushes had taken root, and now flourished thick with flowers. It was a sad sight, but it showed us that the anchorage was calm. If this busted up boat hasn't floated away, our nice boat's gonna be just fine in the same spot. Now, look there. There's a pet bit for the beach ship in. Fine flat sand, never a cat's paw. Trees all around it, and flowers are blowing like a garden in that old ship. Well, once beached, how shall we get her off again? Well, why so, he replied. You take a line ashore, there on the other side of that low water. Take a turn about one of them big pines, bring it back and take a turn around the capstan, and lie to for a tag. Come high water, all hands take a pull on the line, and off she comes as sweet as nature. It's like, hey, you take it, throw a rope around that tree back there, tie it around here, and then when it's time to go, you just pull on that rope when the high water's up, and then you can pull the boat back out. He's teaching them how to parallel park, basically, a boat. It'll be something like that. We're near the bit now. She's too much way on her. Starboard a little, so steady. Starboard, larboard a little, steady, steady. So he issued his commands, which I breathlessly obeyed, till all of a sudden he cried, "Now, my hearty laugh!" And I pulled the helm hard up, and the Hispaniola swung round rapidly, and the stir and ran stem on for the low wooded shore. It's coming in, and he says, "Spin it left." Spinning it left means it's gonna, and it seriously is parallel parking. He's trying to get the boat to park like this, and park it so he can float here. All right. So he's turning it, and as it's turning, the excitement of these last maneuvers had somewhat interfered with the watch I had kept hitherto sharply enough upon the coxswain. Even then, when I was still so much interested waiting for the ship to touch, that I'd quite forgot the peril that hung over my head. I'm so excited I'm about to park a ship, I forgot to watch Israel. And stood craning over the starboard bulwarks, watching the ripples spread wide before the bows. I'm watching over the edge as I'm parking it, I'm like holding it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I might have fallen without a struggle for my life, and not a sudden disquietude seized upon me and made me turn my head. Perhaps I'd heard a creak or seen his shadow moving with the tail of my eye. Perhaps it was an instinct like a cat's, but sure enough, when I looked round, there was Hans halfway toward me with the dirk in his right hand. He must have cried aloud. We must both have cried aloud when our eyes met. But while mine was the shrill cry of terror, his was a roar of fury, like a charging bulls. At the same instant, he threw himself forward and I leapt sideways towards the bows. As I did so, I left hold of the tiller. I let go of the big steering wheel, and I leapt sideways towards the bows. As I did so, I left hold of the tiller, which sprang to the leeward, and I think it saved my life, for it struck Israel Hands across the chest, boom, and stopped him dead for a moment. Before he could recover, I was safe out of the corner. He had me trapped, with all the deck to dodge about. Just forward of the mainmast, I stopped. Oh yeah, drew my pistol from my pocket, took cool aim. Israel, freeze. I'm pointing at you, Jeremiah. I don't really mean to. I drew a pistol from my pocket, took cool aim. Though he had already turned and was once more coming quickly after me, I drew the trigger. Click! The hammer fell, but there followed neither flash nor sound. The priming was useless with seawater. I cursed myself for my neglect. Why had I not long before reprimed and reloaded my weapons? There's water all over it. You gotta put new ammo in there. Then I should not have been, as now, a mere fleeing sheep before this butcher. Wounded as he was, it was wonderful how fast he could move, his grizzled hair tumbling over his face itself as red as a red ensign with his haste and fury. I had no time to try my other pistol, nor need much inclination, for I was sure it would be useless. One thing I saw plainly, I must not simply retreat before him, or he would speedily hold me boxed into the bows, as a moment since he had so nearly boxed me in the stern. Once so caught, and 9 or 10 inches of the blood-stained dirt would be my last experience in this side of eternity. I placed my palms against the mast, which was of goodish bigness, and weighted every nerve upon the stretch. We've got the big hole here with the mast, and so I'm like Whoop, whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And he's on the other side. Seeing that I meant to dodge, he also paused. And a moment or two passed in feints on his part when corresponding movements upon mine. It was such a game as I had played often, played with at home about the rocks of Black Hill Cove. We're playing tag, except he's got a knife. But never before, you may sure, with such a wildly beating heart as now. Still, as I say, it was a boy's game, and I thought I could hold my own at it against an elderly seaman with a wounded thigh. Indeed, my courage had begun to rise so high that I allowed myself a few darting thoughts on what would be the end of this affair. And while I saw certainly I could spin it out for long, I saw no ultimate hope for escape. I can run faster than him, but eventually I'm going to wear out and he's going to kill me. I got no way out. Well, while things stood thus, suddenly the Hispaniola struck. Staggered, ground for an instant in the sand, and then, swift as a blow, canted over to the port side. We forgot we were parking a boat, and the whole time it's been doing this. Boom. But now it hits the sand and tilts itself over this way on its side. Oh, sorry, buddy.
Dead now.
What's that, dude?
So it tilts itself over on its side, 45-degree angle. That's not going to hold. I tried. Then, with swift as a blow, canted over on the port side till the deck stood out at a 45-degree angle, and about a puncheon of water splashed into the scupper holes and lay in a pool between the deck and the bulwark. We were both of us capsized in a second. Both of us rolled almost together into the scuppers. The dead redcap, with his arms still spread, tumbling stiffly after us. Here comes dead guy and me and his real hands falling, and now we're stuck with the water right over the edge here. So near we were, indeed, that my head came against the coxswain's foot. And it was a crack that made my teeth rattle. Blow and all, I was the first afoot again. For hands had gotten all involved with the dead body. Thank you, O'Brien. Thank you, Perkins, for dying. And now rolling, you're on top of his real hands. And he's like, get off of me. But that gives us a chance to get away.
Gee, thanks, Peter.
You're welcome. Just a little shout out for you. Quick as thought, I sprang into the mizzen shrouds, rattled up hand over hand. Wait, I had to find some new way of escape, and that upon an instant, for my foe was almost touching me. Quick as thought, I sprang into the mizzen shrouds, rattled up hand over hand, and did not draw a breath till I was seated on the cross trees. Because we were like this at an angle, I was able to get up here and crawl up on this, and now I'm up, boom, 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 and I'm sitting up on these things, hanging out over the water. Right? We got the picture? Okay. We're hanging out over the water like this.
Why not just go to the island?
What?
Why not just go to the island?
Well, he can't right now. He's in the middle of a fight. All right.
Turf.
Well, he can't get over to that side because he just rolled over. Right? It just tipped him over, and in an instant, he's like, what do I do? So he crawls out up upon this to get away from his real hands. That's what he's trying to do. Because you can't walk that way because the ship's sliding you down. And the beach is on the other side of the boat. We're hanging out over the water. I had been saved by being prompt, and the dirk had struck not half a foot below me as I pursued my upward flight. And there stood his real hands, with his mouth open and his face upturned to mine. A perfect statue of surprise and disappointment. He had just missed me. Now he's standing up the angle and he's like, oh man, what am I going to do? My new employment struck hands. Oh wait, now that I had a moment to myself, I lost no time in changing the priming of my pistol, and then having one ready for service, to make assurance doubly sure, I proceeded to draw the load of the other and recharge it afresh from the beginning. Now I'm packing. My new employment struck hands all of a heap. He began to see the dice going against him, and after an obvious hesitation, he also hauled himself heavily into the shrouds, and with the dirk in his teeth, began slowly and painfully to mount. I got no choice but to start climbing up into the mast with him. It cost him no end of time and groans to haul his wounded leg behind him. I had quietly finished my arrangements before he was much more than a third of the way up. Then, with a pistol in either hand, I addressed him. "One more step, Mr. Hands, and I'll blow your brains out. Dead men don't bite, you know," I added with a chuckle. He stopped instantly. I could see by the working of his face that he was trying to think. And the process was so slow and laborious that in my newfound security, I laughed aloud. At last, with a swallow or two, he spoke, his face still wearing the same expression of extreme perplexity. In order to speak, he had to take the dagger from his mouth, but in all else he remained unmoved. "Jim, I reckon we're fouled, you and me, and we'll have to sign articles. I'd have had you but for that there lurch, but I don't have no luck, not I, and reckon I'll have to strike, which comes hard, you see, for a master mariner to a ship's younker like you, Jim. I hate to kill a young guy on a ship, but I'm gonna have to." I was drinking in his words, smiling away, as conceited as a cock upon a wall, when all in a breath, back went his right hand over his shoulder, phoom, something like an arrow flew through the air. I felt a blow, and then a sharp pang, and there I was, pinned by the shoulder to the mast. In the horrid pain and surprise of the moment, I scarcely can say it was by my own volition, and I'm sure it was without conscious aim, both my pistols went off. Both escaped out of my hands, but they did not fall alone. With a choked cry, the coxswain loosed his grasp upon the shrouds and plunged headfirst into the water.
Jim's wounded. Jim's wounded.
Your job is to read the next paragraph of the next chapter and figure out what do you think just happened, because it was pretty quick. Bang, bang. Here we go. Read the next. Bang, bang. There was a bang, bang play, wasn't there? Hold on, let people read. Perkins didn't really die.